Okay, everybody, so we're going to get started. So this, some people will probably show up hopefully soon. I just want to welcome everyone here. My name is Jeff Waldman, founder of ScaleHR, and we have an amazing webinar taking place today. So just make sure that you're on mute, and if you want to show your video, please do. Totally up to you. We're going to be recording, so we'll share it after we're finished, as well as all of our slides and so forth. Okay. So let's get rolling. So as I mentioned, I am the founder of ScaleHR. So we are a company that works in the SMB tech space, and so we're hyper-focused on skills development. So we work to build up leadership team, and also upskilling HR and talent leaders and practitioners. So we have a lot of different services and products like our new Grow learning community, which all of you are a part of, and we'll get to that later. But we have spent the last 6 months sort of pivoting, got a new website, and so on. So again, really happy to be doing these interactive webinars again. So, okay. ScaleHR talks. So what are they? So I started doing them a couple of years ago, and of course, most webinars are not the most exciting things to attend. They tend to be a little dry and boring. So I said, you know what? Let's make it a little bit more collaborative, interactive, and social. So we've embedded the interactive nature of learning into this, and so we try to focus our topics on research and data, and so we use a very simple tool like Google Meet, and obviously all of our audience. So we try to focus on the HR and talent leaders and practitioners in the tech industry, and as I mentioned, it's a focus on collaboration, networking, and strategy, and so forth. So we'll be doing more of these as we go along, and we have a lot of really interesting topics and guest speakers joining us. So, all right. So this topic, there's just before I go on to the topic. So at the bottom, you'll see a happy face. So if you want to hit the emoji button, thumbs up or whatever the case may be, feel free to do so. You can also raise your hand by clicking on the hand button, and we'll try to get to your question as well. On the bottom right hand side, there is a chat. You can go to the chat, and if you want to go to now, just post where you're calling in from, and also your company, and then Montreal, I'll be there next month. Awesome. And then Edmonton, I used to live there. Cool. Okay, so and then obviously you can, if for the Q&A, you can submit a question in the Q&A. It's the right hand on the activities icon. If you have questions, submit them to the Q&A session, but all of the chat, just the comments and so forth. Okay, I know that all of you have done this in the past, so all good. Okay, so getting back to the topic, mastering metrics, unveiling the path to hiring excellence through data insights. So the idea of this session today is really how do we interpret metrics as it to relate to hiring and recruitment, and so how do you benchmark them against industry standards? Okay, and then how do you make strategic hiring choices, and so those are the key questions that we're going to try to tackle today. And so metric analytics and data is obviously the future, which is now. And we have an amazing guest speaker joining us today. So Janelle Gates is with a company called Team Taylor. Team Taylor is actually one of our partners, and they have an amazing recruitment CRM ATS product. And so Janelle is going to take us through a bit of a short presentation, and then we're going to break out into groups and for about half an hour, and then we'll come back together as the group to share insights, and then we'll do a very short closing. For those who just joined us, welcome, and just try to keep yourself on mute, and if you have questions or please submit them in the question Q&A or comments in the chat. And so I'm going to turn it over to Janelle. So Janelle, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. I'm so excited. I hope this is the first of many discussions that we get to do. Jeff is actually going to go ahead and pop a survey question for all of you to participate in, if you'd be so kind, just so we can get a gauge of who is in the room. Also, I've given Jeff full authority to interrupt me at any point with your questions, so definitely do utilize that Q&A feature. He's ready with the thumbs up. Yes, and whatever questions we aren't able to get to, maybe during my discussion or during our time in groups, we'll be able to connect afterwards. I'd be happy to address anything and everything. While you're filling out those survey questions, maybe you're feeling more of like a mastermind, or maybe you're just trying to survive that data. Hopefully there's something that you can gain regardless of where you fall in the spectrum here. But as we're going through things, I just wanted you to keep in mind that all the data I'm presenting, unless noted otherwise, was collected by Team Taylor earlier this year. So it's all fresh information for you. And again, for those who maybe joined a little bit later, everything is going to be recorded and the slides will be available after our time together. And I'm not able to see the results of this survey. Jeff, are you able to pull those up if people have already participated?
Yeah, I think that is showing live, or it should be. So we only have 3 votes.
Okay.
So what we have is so the question is, if you could describe your approach to data in 2 words, what would it be? First option is metrics mastermind, 0 votes. Insights genius, 0 votes. Analytics apprentice, 3. Data survivor, none. So we only have just a couple of people who voted, but I guess we can make an inference that most of us are at our starting point with data.
Okay, that's great for me to know. I think that'll be super helpful when we're having our discussions following the topic. But I'll go ahead and dive into the content here. So of course, we're looking at recruitment metrics, which are standardized measurements used to track and optimize a company's hiring performance. Now, these measurements can vary depending on size, industry, and the needs of your company. The reason why we're looking into these is that tracking the right metrics could be the difference between an average hire and an exceptional one. So our goal is really to help teams make more informed hiring decisions based on the content that we're covering today. Now, if we're looking at today's current climate, the market is driven by candidates. So this means that candidates have the upper hand over employers, leaving those very top candidates with a plethora of opportunities, many of whom can afford to ignore LinkedIn messages from hiring managers. So hiring managers are now taking on a seller role in the recruitment process. So with this in mind, amidst all of the current economic uncertainties, competition has not only become more intense, there's no sign that it's letting up. So when we asked hiring teams and TA professionals what was going to be happening for their teams in the upcoming months, 70% of professionals said that they would be increasing their hiring over the next 6 months. Many forward-thinking companies are still putting candidate attraction near the top of their priorities in order to get ahead of the game. Also, companies will be tailoring their strategies even more to appeal to Gen Z, who are estimated to make up 27% of the global workforce by 2025, and that data is according to Forbes. Now, with Gen Z being in such involvement in the process, this new wave will bring about a different set of expectations in the workplace in comparison to what we've seen in previous generations. So this works in parallel to workplace flexibility, which will continue to be a prerequisite for companies if they wish to stay competitive. So that's some trends that are going on right now, which if we're looking at trends, that we also want to look at how hiring teams are looking to increase their recruitment in the short term. So more than half of those recruitment teams that we've surveyed said that their budget is going to increase, or it did increase from this previous year. Now, it's interesting that this is kind of a divided result, with close to half of the respondents that we asked said that there was going to be no change to their budget at all. Now, regardless of if there's change or not, we did ask how exactly recruiters are going to be spreading their budget amongst their recruitment expenses. Now, our results show that most TA professionals use their budget on external agencies for recruitment, closely followed by LinkedIn and job boards, while spending the least amount on paid ads and other sources, as you can see in this breakdown. Now, a lot of companies also find it useful to invest in recruitment software, such as an ATS or an HR system, to help combine some of these options and make it easier to attract, hire, and of course, retain their talent. An ATS can improve direct hires and hires made from talent pools, which in turn can greatly reduce those agency costs that account for almost 30% of most HR budgets. Now that we've talked about the trends and the spending, these are the metrics that we're going to be covering today. So we're not covering all the possible HR metrics. We're just going to be looking at the most popular ones. So some of these you may be familiar with, others you may not be. Again, feel free to ask questions, and Jeff will interrupt me at his will. The first metric I'm going to break down is cost per hire. So this is one of those that is very polarizing. Some swear by it, others don't see a use for it. In fact, 60% of those that we spoke to do not measure their average cost per hire at all. So you may be thinking, like, why is calculating CPH so important to some and not to others? Well, for starters, although the formula is very simple, it's not quite as straightforward as that. And there really isn't a one-size-fits-all approach in this area of recruitment. So, of course, costs can vary depending on seniority, experience, job type, a number of other factors, which can also vary from company to company. So using cost per hire to measure and optimize your recruitment strategy can also lead to hiring to save money rather than hiring for quality. Hiring for top talent could be more expensive in the long run, but it would likely be the better choice, leading to a better outcome. So what we do recommend for cost per hire is that you combine it with your other hiring metrics. So for example, you may have candidates come from a different number of sources, as most of us do, and some of those may be more cost-effective than others. So make sure you're using your ATS to measure your source of hire. Speaking of source of hire, lends right well into this slide. Source of hire, of course, for those that are feeling maybe on the data survivor side, is when you are looking at exactly where your newly recruited employees are coming from. So depending on your hiring strategy, it can be a really important metric to measure. Now, most companies use this data to allocate their budget to the most valuable resources, which of course makes sense. For example, this figure here shows that most hires from the companies that we asked came from recruitment agencies. Now, despite notoriously being a more costly approach, recruitment agencies have always sought to bring in higher quality candidates while saving time sourcing them in the first place. So there's a little give and take there. Following agencies, as anticipated, there are job boards, which have yielded a really high percentage. Now, if you're looking at this data and you want to use it to refine your process, you might want to check which job boards are bringing in the best candidates, and then make sure your job descriptions are optimized for that platform and that you're using your ATS to keep on top of your job board analytics. Now, shifting over to time to hire. So this is another really common metric that HRs use to benchmark their success. So in simple terms, it's the measurement between the days a candidate is hired versus when they originally applied for the role. Now, time to hire can offer insights into overall process, such as their experience or maybe just how efficient your team is. According to LinkedIn, depending on the role you're applying for, the time to hire can vary depending between 33 and 49 days. Now, this one is especially challenging to pin down as far as like an ideal time to hire, since like timings and costs generally increase with seniority of the position. So companies should really look into ensuring they adapt their recruitment process accordingly when it comes to those different roles. Now, if you're aiming to meet or even exceed your competition in this realm, you'll want to be sure that you're utilizing your tech. So your ATS, for example, you want to be sure that you have all those automations in place. So maybe if a candidate meets a certain criteria, you can have them automatically move to a next stage. You can have automated interviews sent out for scheduling. You can have a contract sent at the final stage in the process when you're ready to make the hiring decision. Along with automations, hand in hand is integrations. So if you have a background check process or part in your process, an assessment piece, or maybe a reference check, having those integrations turned on, making sure your technology is working together cohesively saves a lot of time. And of course, you just want to be communicating and nurturing those candidates. So be sure that you're upping their communication as far as new postings maybe, or even letting them know like where they're at in the process when you're able. Now, the undercover recruiter asked an expert panel of founders and C-suite executives what the most important recruitment metric is, with the general consensus being that the quality of hire comes above all else. So naturally, what qualifies as quality can vary depending on company, and it is very subjective. It's also very tricky to measure factors such as like cultural fit or employee engagement. So this is perhaps best. This is perhaps because it's just tricky to measure quality. So for the professionals that we asked, the top 3 measurements of quality of hire are going to be retention rate, performance appraisal score, and cultural fit. So again, some things can be subjective, but these are what your colleagues are using. Now, according to certain research, top candidates find a new role within 10 days. So candidates who've had a positive experience in your hiring process are more likely to accept a job offer, to reapply for future roles, and also to refer other high quality candidates. So what I really want you to take away from this is that, extract from this, is that it's really critical to hire for quality. So you can only really improve on what you know. So take the steps to measure quality of hire in your own way that is reflective of your team and organization. Now, it definitely may take a lot longer and costs a lot more than planned to hire the right person for a role. But when you have that exceptional hire as a part of your team, you know you'll make it back tenfold. Now, speaking of candidate experience, there is a staggering 89% of the HR professionals that we surveyed who claim that they measure their candidate experience when hiring. So this is now regarded as a necessity to any successful recruitment process. So the experience is typically measured using retention rate, acceptance rate, time to hire, NPS, as well as candidate satisfaction score. So what's important to keep in mind is that from landing on your career site right up to the job offer, this is the experience your candidates are having. So if you don't have a way to track the success of this, then you're really going to struggle to understand your target candidate persona. Now, tracking this metric is not only helpful for improving candidate experience, but also in protecting your employer brand. So this kind of bleeds into other things. As we know, just as if you're an unhappy restaurant attendee, if you're an unhappy candidate, you're really likely to speak about your negative experience, which of course can spread through either their community, on socials, even Glassdoor, which can impact your brand perception and deters other candidates from applying. So the best way to track candidates' satisfaction, we would recommend, is through NPS surveys. So this can be done manually with a third-party tool or using an ATS with a built-in NPS survey. One of the most important things to note from our research is that although a company's website is the 3rd highest source of hire, HR teams also spend the least amount of their budget on their career sites. So A candidate will research everything they can about a company beforehand. So having a stunning career site is really going to show off your company culture and what it's like to work for your team. Now, retention rate is another key metric capable of benchmarking success in an HR team. According to our survey, retention rate is the most important KPI for HR decision makers, and as we saw in our section on candidate experience and quality of hire. So according to the the American National Bureau of Economic Research, candidates that go through an ATS end up staying in a role much longer than candidates who don't. So the candidate experience begins, again, from that moment the candidate lands on your career site, which means that every interaction you have with the candidate from that point onward is likely to determine your retention rate. So some industries may be equipped for a low retention rate, others are not. And it can really be one of those costly and lengthy processes just to find the right talent to fill the role. Now, our studies have shown that companies using Team Taylor have seen a 73% increase in talent retention. I'm just going to brag about the company for a little bit because I liked that piece. But if you're a company that is finding it difficult to fill and retain a role, measuring your retention rate through an ATS is one way to stay on top of it. As far as further improvement goes, you'll really want to be offering transparency, communicating with your team frequently, and collecting feedback from the very start of the recruitment process. So those are going to be the keys to keeping your retention rate high. You'll also really want to avoid mis-selling a role, especially if you're just trying to land a candidate then and there, because I'm sure, as some of you have experienced, that will likely just come back to haunt you. So it's important to note that if there are any patterns in who exactly are leaving, so are they from a similar role or department, it might be time to do a little bit of research and get to the crux of the matter. There can also be numerous ways in which a company's retention rate is not where it wants to be. This, of course, is going to vary depending on the company and the industry. And of course, at Team Taylor, we like to say, don't just accept your acceptance rate. A major part of this comes down to the package you offer your candidates. So often it's beneficial to look at this on paper with your HR team and determine the benchmarks as far as like salary and benefits, comparing them to your competitors. Now, you'll really want to be looking at, does it reach the industry standard, and does it reflect who you are as a company? Maybe you aren't able to increase salary, but where can you be flexible? So for example, if you want to personalize the offer, that can really make a fundamental difference to a candidate. You might consider offering a flexible work arrangement for those who maybe can't make it into the office every day, or offer professional training opportunities. So it may cost a company a bit more to get a candidate on board, but of course, this is going to be a far more sustainable decision. But I know I have spilled a whole lot over the last 10, 15 or so minutes. So if I can boil it down to anything, it's really going to be this slide. So while it's really important that your metrics are based on your own company's industry, headcount, and overall strategy, it's also important to note that there's an emphasis on specific metrics, such as like the retention rate, quality of hire, and candidate experience, which were voted as the most valuable HR metrics according to our study. So this may be largely associated with how those metrics intertwine with one another. So for example, I know a lot of them overlapped, but like your retention rate is extremely likely to be influenced by a positive candidate experience, which, as the data shows, is improved by understanding the analytics in your ATS, whether that's your NPS or your career site figures. So while it's really easy to become reliant on data, those metrics should merely be used as a guide to help you determine your company's hiring journey, instead of using them purely to define success.
Okay. So how did it go? Any comments, thoughts?
It went well. We shared a lot with Vicky and with Laurelie. We just got cut off at the end.
Yeah, so obviously I had to set a time limit, but we are at 12:50 right now, 12:50 Eastern time. So, I mean, if you want more time, I can push you back into the breakout rooms, or we can just have a group conversation here. I mean, it's really up to you. But, the idea here is to maybe just talk a bit about a debrief as to what you talked about and what you jotted down in terms of your notes. And if you want to go back to the main question, Janelle, if you can just go back to the just one more. So what are your thoughts on the data presented? What metrics are you currently using? And then, ask the question as to why, what value are they providing? And then how you can sort of level up and boost your game when it comes to metrics going forward. So does anybody want to share their thoughts? Don't all jump at once.
Janelle and I think we can fill in. So our group, we had some people coming in and out, and we lost continuity a little bit. But I think through that, we gathered some of the metrics that are used in the group. So shall I share the document or just speak to it?
You can share if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll just put it in the chat. So that I asked Janelle, because I didn't know that she was part of our group. I thought she was just passing by to see how things are going, and I was just checking with her. But I asked her what are the top metrics that you would consider as top metrics in this area, and she said retention rate, quality of hire, and candidate experience. And then Annie in the group also added referrals, rejection reasons, scorecard submission rates, time spent in each stage, conversion rates between the different stages in the recruitment process, and where the candidate came from. These are some of the metrics that they use. We talked a little bit about metrics as providing indicators or foundation for further intervention or involvement, that the metric does not lie, but there's a level of translation on top of it. What does it mean to be low or high in that? That may need to be tailored to the organization. And then how do you learn more if one of the numbers is not where you want it to be? How to have the face-to-face conversations to get more insight into that. We got distracted. We didn't cover all the questions. Janelle, anybody else want to add something? Feel free.
I just have a question for you, Ashley. So you talked about, so these are the metrics that you currently use. So how do you currently track them, measure them currently?
Annie?
So Annie is not able to be on audio, but she might comment in the chat. But she was the one who provided a few additional metrics that she uses on her team.
Are you asking if it's like automated or if it's like just?
Yeah, because ultimately, generating data and metrics is can be cumbersome if it's sort of a manual process. And so obviously nowadays, so we have technology that we can use that basically to automate, so through a dashboard or the ATS. And so that's one of the things that I always look for. Obviously, is what can we automate instead of spending time, putting together dashboards or metrics of data, and then once you do it, then the data is old, right? So it's kind of pointless to start with. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like building infrastructure for things so that they're useful, but then the thing is actually changed. Always running between doing things quick and dirty or doing it. Yeah, it's an interesting tension.
What about the other group? Do you have anything to share, add that you're talking about? What are the current metrics that you're using? Then maybe even if you were able to, why you use these metrics, and then how you can improve going forward. Anybody?
Sorry, my mic was off. I was going on by myself here. I think I think
That's
we had
okay.
a little bit of an ad hoc conversation. We didn't really draw anything down. We talked a little bit about where we are, what the market looks like, a little bit of the metrics, like what are we keeping metric-wise. So in my case, I work for a very small agency. Us, it's not, we're not like held to metrics, but we are tracking our time to hire, how long they stayed, if there's any skills or qualification gaps. We talked about the competitive job market a little bit, of the salary expectations. Once we place somebody, are they thriving? Are they under some maybe poor management or something? So it was a little bit of ad hoc.
Okay. So just a question on that. So have you noticed any shifts or changes during the past maybe year or two in some of these metrics as to how important they are, or what they're showing?
Yes, we have. Honestly, on our side here, I mean, we were very busy during the pandemic. There were a lot of companies who let go a lot of people. People were just like, just get me something. I just need to work right now. But then they realized it's the wrong culture, bouncing around a little bit. And now it's catching up somewhat with them, because companies are looking at, yeah, okay, in the last 3 years, 4 years, you bounced around quite a bit. But as long as we can actually explain what happened, I think it helps. We also talked about a very high expectations salary-wise, which are, out of control right now a little bit here. People with 3-4 years of experience expecting the same salary as somebody with 15-20 years experience, just because the candidates are becoming overwhelmingly demanding. I was sharing with the ladies that I do some calls, like a lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. I would like to talk to you, maybe a job opportunity, which I take the calls. I may not have anything for them at the moment, but my conversation ends up being like a grocery list they give me. This is what I want. This is where I want to be. This is how I want to work from home. I don't want to do anything. So it's almost like taking down their expectations, and good luck to me trying to find something for them that matches everything that they are wanting. So it's a little bit of give and take on both ends, I think. Did it shift? Yes. I mean, we have some roles that the hiring, it could be done in 2 weeks, 14 days, or it could go up to 6 months, depending on the role as well, and the industry as well.
I'm just wondering, Mandy, sorry, I'm just asking questions, Janelle, obviously pop in if you want to. It is obviously with the pandemic and forcing people to, work from home. I've been very interested to understand, the impact that job seeker preferences play in, time to hire and sort of all of your metrics, right? So, I mean, so we work primarily in the tech industry, so things change at 24 hours, and so if more of the market is moving towards more of a hybrid preference or sort of working from home, how does that shift and change your metrics going forward?
We work with the company, so we don't have like a set of rules on what roles we take on. So when a company reaches out to us, this is what we are offering. Obviously, everybody wants to put out there that they're giving a work-life balance, but more and more companies want the people to be back in office, at least partially, not full-time. Like so far, depending on the role. I mean, if you're a on-the-ground manager in a manufacturing environment, you cannot be working from remotely. A lot of people are looking for, the commute time that they're not spending commuting can be very well used up to actually do some work. There's also the cost savings. I mean, typically, remote workers save money on transportation, on work attires, on daily meals, which also contributes to their financial health. So they're looking at that aspect. Look, I've been doing the job for the last 2-3 years, and the job is done, and I feel financially more free. So it's just finding that perfect balance between the candidates and the companies as well. So we don't only work with one industry or one type of company, and we're just trying to customize whatever they need.
So this is just a general question for everyone. Yes, Laura, you fashionably came late, so we had to push you into a group and not knowing what you were talking about. Are any of you measuring different metrics today than you were measuring, say, 2 years ago?
Jeff, it's a really good question because 3 years ago I was in a different company. So it was very different. I was at Air Canada for over 22 years. And
Oh, wow.
unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, I was part of the 20,000 that were just let go. And my role at that company in the last 4 years that I was there was in recruiting. And it was mass hiring, customer service agents, flight attendants. Those metrics were very important. And we had to be on top of those metrics because if you have a class of 800 flight attendants starting on April 1st, and you start your recruiting the previous year in August, you have to make that number. So we kept very different, very strict KPIs for sure. But since I've been with this team, for us, we measure the metrics, yes, but then we also are very dependent on how our clients are interacting with us back and forth. So it's a bit of a different, yeah.
Well, obviously your focus now is a bit different. So what about Vicky, any or Sama, do you have any insights? Different metrics that you might be using? No. Okay. Okay. Bounced down, took a break during the pandemic, so can't be okay. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Okay, so let's here, let me so Janelle, I mean, if you can go to the next slide. So we're gonna do one little quick survey, right? We don't have very many people left, so don't go answer this survey. So Vicky, you're back. I'm gonna launch a survey. Show everyone the result. Here we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Did the survey pop up?
Pop up, but I'm not able to select. Even the first time when I wanted to put
Really?
my survey. Yeah.
Are you
technology
on-
is the
Yeah, I was just going to ask if she was on Chrome or not, and I wonder if that has to do like the browser, maybe.
It might have to do with that.
Okay.
I do apologize for that.
Hey, no worries.
Technology. So my biggest line is technology is a beautiful thing if it works. So
This time.
if it doesn't work, it's like holy moly, terrible. So I do apologize for that. So we do have one vote. So the question was, how has this time influenced your perception of recruitment metrics? So maybe just put in the chat, Mandy, Vicky, and Denis, what your choices would have been. Option number one, boosted my metric mojo. Option two, illuminated metric pathways. Option two, unveiled the metric mystique. And option four, metric ? My playground.
Lots of good options.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. So you can put it in the chat if you want. If not, or you can just speak it out. Unmute yourself. Sama, I think he selected, where is it?
Pathway. I selected pathways.
The metric pathways.
because the mojo, I wasn't sure I understood what mojo
I
meant.
understand.
But mojo is more mystique. So I don't think there's more mystique. I think there's more clarity. That it's doable. It's tangible things. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be magical.
So how about Vicky?
I picked the second one too, that pathway.
Okay. Mandy?
Same, the second one.
You're just going with the group think. Okay. And Nene, hope you enjoyed it, and we will be in touch soon. So thank you, Janelle, for being here. Obviously, just to let you all know, I want to make sure that the reporting captures it. But Team Taylor is actually a partner of ScaleHR, and they've been fantastic in terms of supporting me and ScaleHR. And so and they'll be in Montreal, next month, sponsoring Social HR Camp Montreal, which I'm running on October 26th. So if you have a if you want to be in Montreal next month, so join us. And so I want to thank everybody for being here.
Thank you so much for
Thank you
having us,
guys so
Jeff.
much.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.